I'm Tom Young, and I have this Dino 246 GT at my shop that I'm going to do a compression check on it. So let's get started. I've already removed the plugs, which for this car it's easy because there's only 6 plugs, so it makes it a little bit easier to do than a V12. And then the other thing I did was I just rigged up a pair of vice grips to keep the throttle open, because when you do a compression check, it's always good to do it with the throttles open, so that way you don't have any vacuum issues and you give the engine the best potential of compression. So having the throttles open is another thing that you should do. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the fuel pump fuse, which is here. Let's see, it's this third one here. So let me take this out. And the reason why I'm doing that is because when you're running a compression check, the ignition's on to turn over the starter, and what ends up happening is the fuel pump runs the whole time. So the best thing to do is just take it out, and that way I'm going to just set it right here and put it all back when I'm done. But you just don't want the fuel pump to be running, or you can. I mean, the carburetor should, needles should close, but I just think it's less stressful on the carburetors in case there's an issue and for some reason fuel gets past the needles, and then you end up with a flooded out engine with all the fuel in there. So it's easier to just pull the fuel pump fuse, and then I can just crank the car and not worry about it. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the coil, which is in the trunk area. I'm going to pull that out, and this car has MSD, so I'm also going to disconnect the MSD. So we're just got less issues as far as, firing, and arcing and all that other stuff. So get that done, and then install the compression checker. So to install the compression checker, I just use the correct adapter that just screws into number 1 cylinder. I'll start with number 1. Screw that all the way in. And then I can put the adapter on here. I'll lay this out. And what I'm going to do, since I can't really see the compression checker because it's in the edge compartment, you may see it as it cranks over. Let me just see if I can get this oriented right. But what I'm going to do is go in the car and crank it and count the amount of compression strokes. I mean, at some point it will just stop giving any more compression, and that's what we're looking for, the maximum amount of pressure. Just looking for consistency. So let's say I do 8 or 9 compression strokes. I want to go through 8 compression strokes or 9 compression strokes on all the cylinders, so that way we know that 8 compression strokes is what this car can do. 9 or 10 or 11, at some point it's just not going to build any more pressure. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get the health of the engine. First, make sure there's good compression, which we're hoping it's something above 120, 130, 140. But the other thing about it is also consistency, because even though this is a cold engine, I can get at least an idea of how much compression there is when I'm cranking over this engine. So let's see what happens. Okay, so that was 10 compression strokes. Let's see what the compression checker says. Compression checker says 150 pounds of pressure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen for 10. Since I did that at 10, I'm going to keep consistent and just do 10 for every single one. So let me write that down. And what I'll do is I will also take a picture of it. Okay, so that's number 1. So what I'll do next is I will let the air out, and I'll move it over to the next one, which is number 2, obviously. The trick on these things is not to cross, obviously. Anytime you work with spark plugs, you don't want to cross thread any of it. So you just want to be really careful. The first couple cylinders are easy because they're really well exposed. The ones that are tough are the ones in the back. All right, so this is number 2. Let's see what we got. We have one, it's like kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 145. Okay, this is number 3. See if I can get this so it doesn't try to spin out of there. Looks like 150, 148. All right, so on a Ferrari, usually what happens is the cylinders, you know, on an American car, you would look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But on a Ferrari, it's 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. So the next cylinder is that one. So number 4 is over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, the next number 4 cylinder is over here. Just gotta find it, kind of blindly thread it in. Helps I have the right side in there. And see if I can get it started without seeing it. All right. So just making sure that one is definitely number 4. Get my compression checker, plug it in. Lay this over here. Let's see what we got. $150. Got 125, I think. That one's a little low. And finally, number 6. That one is at 140. I'm going to recheck the one that had low compression. Not low. I'm going to recheck it. Still there, 120, 125, no change. So that cylinder is just a little low. I think when also I'm checking this engine cold, so compression usually comes up a little bit when you run it, and everything's a little warmer. So I'm not really concerned. I wasn't really concerned about it anyway, but it's always just good to make sure it wasn't something that I did. So, all right, let me put this all back together. One of the tools I use is this thing. This is just a 1/4-inch drive with a little rubber boot. It helps a ton to thread these spark plugs in blindly without cross-threading. So what I do is get it in there, and it will find the threads and start threading it, but will slip if it feels it cross-threading, and you won't ruin the threads. Especially helpful on these back ones that you can't really see. I'm going to do is reconnect the ignition. Close that up. Put the fuse back in. So you can see that. That's in. That's back. And then what I do always is, now that everything's back together, I'm going to see if she'll fire up. Let me see. I got the fuel pump in, got the ignition back in. Let's just make sure she starts. On the fuel pump for a second or two. I can hear that's back on. Give it a couple pumps. Pressure's firing, and it's firing on all cylinders, so plugged everything back in correctly. Anyway, that's how you do the compression check on the car, and so there you go.